Baldur's Gate 3 is an isometric CRPG that takes place in a D&D campaign setting. While it has the number 3 in the title, a player can easily pick up the game without having any knowledge of either of the first two games. Players who have played the prior games will notice callbacks, familiar characters, and familiar lore. The story. You begin the game as a captive. A Mind Flayer tadpole is implanted into your eye. It worms its way into your brain. Soon after this happens, the ancient ship that you're imprisoned upon is attacked. It plane shifts into literal hell, and you're freed from the pod that had restrained you. The cinematic ends and the game begins. If you don't escape your captor's alien ship as it hurtles recklessly onward, then you will die on it, because it's not going to stay reckless for much longer. If you can survive your escape, then your problems haven't ended, because you'll still need to find a way to remove the tadpole. Otherwise, your survival will be short-lived. It's a parasitic larva which will inevitably painfully kill you once it matures. At best, you should have only days to find a cure. It's time to venture forth. Baldur's Gate 3 has one of the most coherent storylines that I've seen in a CRPG. The more in-game information a player uncovers, the more the story's events and its characters' decisions make sense. Yet, player choice still matters, and there are several different possible endings. This is a truly story-rich game. Good writing is difficult to come by in general. I think that's true for most mediums. Many tales hinge on characters warping at random to fit the story's intended plot, or lose their integrity through other highly dramatic, weak nonsense. It's very pleasant to experience a unique tale that's mostly good, and needs no apologists or fan theories to justify this or that major development. I think that credit should be given to BG3 for that achievement. Its story is well woven throughout. Yet, that isn't to say that I expected or experienced perfection. Solid writing doesn't mean flawless writing. That said, while its major story points are mostly fine, they do have some mild to moderate problems, and occasional hiccups due to glitches. Since the game has been very hyped, I think that keeping one's expectations in check is important. I suggest expecting good writing, but also being prepared for some hiccups. There are 3 acts in the game, and the quality does decline as the story goes on. Act 1 is solid, Act 2 is less so, and Act 3 is the least polished, with several glitches in it. There are also many subplots during each act. In Act 1, the core plotline concludes well. There are also many side quests, and they seem polished. In Act 2, things become a little broken. The chapter's conclusion ends in a set way, but there are different paths towards it. Some of these paths are fine, while others are glitchy. For example, if you offer peace to a villain in Act 2, then the game breaks a bit. The cutscene has a rough, glitchy cut in it, which both looks and sounds odd. The dialogue which follows from various NPCs doesn't quite fit what happened either. It seems as if the game thinks that another choice was chosen. In Act 3, your party finally reaches a big city. New story threads are revealed, and old ones gain dimension. It's an interesting act. However, Act 3 definitely still needs more patching, even though it's been months now since the game was released. It's also the weakest act for the story, writing-wise, even though it's still not bad. For example, a plot-armored villain kept showing up to harass my party during Act 3. Plot armor is weak writing. In my opinion, this attempt at creating a taunting, temporarily invulnerable villain was one of the weaker aspects of the entire game's writing, but her being a lamely written nuisance was still tolerable. It didn't ruin the game for me. After all, plenty of stories have obnoxious villains which conveniently teleport away when threatened. Games are especially guilty of this too. I do think that she could have been more darkly menacing though, and that the other villains were written better. It was her ability to glitch out that was a big obstacle for me. That almost ruined my playthrough. Since this evil NPC was written poorly, and she annoyed me, I wondered if it was possible to get rid of her early on. I figured out a way to do it. I'd hoped that I'd found a neat secret option, because the game does have several options in it which aren't immediately obvious. These secret options can be neat to discover too. But unfortunately, her premature elimination was not a secret feature. It was just a big bug. Offing this enemy too early on terribly glitched my game, and it glitched in several ways. I wound up having to cause another glitch to cancel out the first one because I had to prompt a cinematic later on. Otherwise, without that cinematic, she wouldn't drop loot and the game couldn't proceed. As a result of all that glitching, nothing regarding her went quite right. Going into further detail would reveal tons of spoilers, and I don't want to surprise any viewers with that. I'm trying to do a spoiler-free review here, or at least a mostly spoiler-free one. However, I will eventually upload the glitch train in a different video, and add a link into the video's description once it's up, for others to see if they want to. But really, that's what the game has the worst problem with, glitches. As I said, actual story issues are mild to moderate, and tolerable. What most disappointing disappointed me as I played were the game's subplots. It wasn't that they were bad. These additional tales were often good, but they just lacked depth. As a result, they offered tantalizing stories, drew me in, but then let me down. I think that the problem was simply that the devs tried to include too much. Consequently, many tales to the side of the main story were fun to investigate, but they also felt rushed and incomplete, which eventually led to dissatisfaction. It's difficult to cover such a topic without giving away spoilers though, so to avoid spoilers, I plan to do a separate video on my favorite subplot and to link to it in this video's description later on. It's easier just to make spoilers their own videos. Media coverage. Is the game woke? Many people have very strong politicized opinions about this game. I think she's a good example of how things are being perceived in this game. Instead of finding any new, interesting info on the character, looking into that NPC online led to my finding a lot of people amped up about the NPC's sexuality. On the one side, I came across people claiming that it's too woke for a game to feature powerful lesbians. On the other side, people were being so protective of the idea of representation, a gender-bending mod was even banned on Nexus mods for being hateful. This was despite the mod being the idea of doing a gender bend, which is hella common in fandoms. I mean, it was even done to a turtle dragon monster. My own opinion isn't so polarized. I think that this game is neither super woke nor conservative. I'd consider BG3 super woke if it were preachy, but just showing diversity isn't, in my opinion, a radical thing. Its treatment of sexuality reminded me of the animation Arcane, which is based on League of Legends.
You know what your problem is?
Please, tell me.
You expect everyone to give you what you want. If you really want people to talk to you, you have to let them think you have what they want.
And what do I have?
You're hot, Cupcake. So what'll it be, man or woman?
Hi.
Varying sexuality is similarly just a normal part of life in Faerun, and no one in-game worries about it. It didn't bother me. Before making this review, I'd already gotten one comment from a subscriber wondering whether or not this game is woke, and if Media Hype has them or anybody else concerned about if it is, or if it's not. My advice is to not worry about it. I think things get way too politicized these days. Media coverage, is it raunchy? I'm also aware that many people are concerned about companions being too pushy and about perversion because of Larian getting banned from TikTok over a bestiality clip, so while I'm addressing media coverage, I'll address that subject as well. Sexualized content, which isn't pursued, is normally tame. My PC was awkwardly hit on by Lae'zel.
I was too hasty to judge you. I thought you witless, gutless, unimpressively bland. Now, well, you've earned my respect and more still. You've proven your wits. You are efficient and dominant, in and out of battle. You've proven your courage. I swear you would tear the horns off one dragon to plunge into another. And you're hardly bland. Your scent alone is enough to make my neck sweat and my hairs stand on end. Isn't it obvious? I want to taste you. Perhaps tonight, perhaps later, but I want it all the same. Do you? Your loss, I fear. One day soon, you will wonder how my lips might have tasted, how my fingers on your skin might have felt, and you will wish you could return to this lost moment.
Halsin thought he was hit on due to a glitch, and another glitch made Halsin hit on my PC twice instead of once. Gale offered to hang out and then was disappointed when it didn't lead to intimacy, which was a little awkward. Astarion whined that he wanted sex with someone at a party. Some non-companion NPCs made out with each other rarely. NPCs mentioned sex or made sexual jokes. At worst, you can walk in on some monsters banging in a barn in Act 1. But sexualized moments aren't the norm to stumble across. As for the truly horny content, it would have to be sought out. and repeatedly selected during dialogue clips to confirm that that's what the player wants. There's an in-game brothel, most of the companions are open to sex, one druid companion can be a bear during sex as seen in the banned TikTok clip, and some freaky one-night stands are available. The content's there, but it's not in your face unless you want it in your face. As for clothing, it's completely customizable. You can make your party appear armored up, wearing normal clothing, wearing skimpy clothing, or even do a nudist run. It's content that's there for those who want it, but it's easily ignorable by those who don't want it. The characters. Characters are well voiced, well acted through motion capture, have understandable motivations, and are written well. This applies to companions, the villains, and even random NPCs. I frequently wanted to see how characters would react, often interacted with NPCs, and have watched many clips by others on YouTube just to see what ifs for choices that I didn't select. There's no doubt that the game's characters added a fun sense of vitality to the story, but that isn't to say that I was a big fan of any character in particular, even though I was definitely entertained by them. So while I do think that the companions are great to have tag along and that they add depth to the journey, frankly, I think that no one character seemed amazing to me because the game tried to handle too many at once. If you romance a character, then they do get more screen time, which helps flesh them out in a way that's more than romantic, but I didn't do this. Plus, that option is, obviously, not available to NPCs, which you're only dealing with instead of partying up with. And I did frequently feel that some characters deserved more screen time because they were interesting and left underdeveloped. For instance, there's a character called Gortash, which I found to be interesting and multidimensional in a way that many antagonists aren't. He's well written and consistent in both his thoughts and ambitions. However, he's not on screen much. Even in others' playthroughs where they make decisions where he gets a bit more screen time, there's still a sense of, oh, come on, let this character shine. So I do think that in its desire for a large cast and an epic tale, the devs just didn't have enough time to give every character their due. However, as far as flaws go, this one's mild. After all, having many well-written characters that leave the audience wanting more, sure, that's a problem, but one which also underlines how well crafted the characters are, and that they're enjoyable to encounter. When it comes to the actual party characters, then there are 10 of them. I had all of them except for one, Minthara. This happened because I played before an update which let you recruit both Minthara and Halsin in the same playthrough. The first 6 can also be played as origin characters, which allows for some unique content. If you dislike the companions though, they aren't mandatory to keep around. You can also recruit Blander hirelings once an NPC called Withers joins your camp. You can either find him or else he'll auto-join you eventually. He'll also offer resurrections and let your character and your companions be respect. The gameplay. At first, I played the game on its standard balanced mode. I had picked a wild magic sorcerer and was hoping that this choice would provide some random magical fun and a challenge. When that turned out to be more boring than I'd expected, then I switched to tactician mode. The game lets you alter its difficulty level at any point. Although tactician mode is supposed to be a difficult experience, the game's combat isn't that hard. Certain rescue scenarios are difficult, but that's not really due to combat. Instead, the difficulty is due to both the missions being timed and the NPCs being stupid due to bad AI. I found that this made trying to save every person in groups of NPCs one of the most difficult tasks in the game. Yet, even then, saving every NPC was always possible. Plus, those scenarios don't even require that. You can still clear the rescue scenarios without heroically saving everyone there. Not every rescuable NPC matters. Many of them disappear after being saved, never to reappear again in any meaningful way. As for actual combat, it's generally easy when using just a little bit of strategy. A little thought, abilities, and spells applied in the right way at the right times, and you're golden. Despite it being easy, I found it to be fun, because I liked that cleverness mattered. So while I would have preferred better challenges, I wasn't bored either. I often used different spells, ability combos, tried different gear out, used terrain to my advantage, stealth to get into better positions, and more. It felt closer to tabletop adventuring in a CRPG than I've come across before, because it was easy to play around with what was available to me. You can even knock most enemies out and take a pacifist route that way if you want to. If an NPC has low enough HP to knock out while stealth, you can even knock them out and they won't know who did it. You won't lose any reputation points, though Lorien has, since I played, unfortunately made this less of a beneficial thing to do to merchants. And while I did play as a wild magic gnome sorcerer, there are many other races and classes available to choose from. A balanced party generally contains a mix of ranged fighters, melee fighters, and spellcasters. A rogue is also a good, helpful idea to include in the party. That's because of that class's sleight of hand skills. And disarming is very good to keep your party from getting hurt. Your active party can only contain your own PC and up to 3 companions, along with whatever creatures are summoned. Extra companions just hang out at camp. Since there are 10 possible companions and most are easy to gain, and hirelings exist too, finding your own party balance should be easy. You can switch out party members at camp at almost any time. Additionally, scrolls and potions are of great help when it comes to doing various things, such as flying, without needing a mage to cast spells. Spells are a limited resource because they take spell slots to cast. Except for a few outlying cases, spell slots can only refresh after long resting. This makes being able to conserve them by relying on supportive items a handy tactic.
Good idea, Karlach.
Let's get on with it.
I don't want this review to turn into a how to play guide though, but I will note one more mechanic, and that's the resting system. Resting comes in two forms, short and long. A short rest can be taken twice per day and will restore some abilities, HP and other things. Long resting will restore everything, including every class's spell slots. There's a food cost to take a long rest, but food is plentiful in the game. I'm mentioning this mechanic because it's important to take long rests. I hadn't realized that when I began the game. Important cutscenes and cinematics, such as someone showing up at camp during the night or a character revealing backstory info, are scripted to play out only when taking a long rest. This means that not resting overnight enough can cause problems. Several scripted cutscenes do need to play out after all. They can sort of form a glitchy queue. Some scenes might be skipped, appear in a weird order, or multiple alternate scenes will play for the same subject. I did experience that glitchiness due to not resting long enough. However, some of these problems have since been patched, such as Astarion revealing something and then my PC being shocked about what he'd already revealed later on. It's also important to note that leaving an area includes returning to your camp to take a long rest. In many games, you can go to camp to heal whenever you like without consequence, so I figure it's worth mentioning that at some points you're logically going to face consequences if you see something, yet walk away. Otherwise, nothing will happen until you get there. The NPCs not in danger until you see that they are. I think that this mechanic is a sensible balance between realistic adventuring and a player being given time to discover events. After all, being on a strict timer would be harsh and cause much content to be missed. However, being prepared to face the unknown is, well, an adventuring prerequisite. When all of these facts are taken together, it should hopefully be obvious that you can approach combat in several different ways, and that it's easy to rest up and face combat on the daily while having fun with various fully charged abilities. Figuring out whatever works best for you and playing around with options can be rather fun. But when it comes to gameplay, there are of course things to do other than combat. Exploration is also a major game feature. It's a mix of both fun and annoying though. Of course, it's fun to find new places, hidden secrets, and more, but it can also be annoying because exploring containers becomes tedious over many hours. Many crates and barrels have either nothing or worthless, rotten food items in them. Sometimes where rotten eggs and tomatoes or whatnot can be found makes no sense, too. Vases are also containers, but most types of vases are always empty. After a very long time of experiencing that, trying to find hidden secrets in containers feels more boring than fun. But yet, the chance of missing out on something like a secret bit of information on a torn page, well, for those who are into the story, like I was, and want to know more, like I did, exploring containers in the first playthrough is likely going to be a chosen chore. As the setting is explored, there are many obvious side quests which can be completed, but there are also additional quests to discover. Some quests are fun, yet underdeveloped. Others are shallow ones which could be erased and not missed. This means that quest-based gameplay sometimes feels like busy work by the time Act 3 rolls along. I would have preferred to have had fewer side quests, and for the ones which were kept to have had greater depth. As an example, I'll mention one rather interesting quest which I would have liked to see more of. It's possible to save a young girl from a hag. Maybe. This side quest is strange in its premise, because hags are only supposed to devour infants. Yet, this girl's 7 years old. She also doesn't seem quite right after being saved.
Everything is going to be all right. I promise.
Mommy!
That's right. Mummy is here.
Mommy.
You hungry, sweet girl? How about we bake something? You love bacon. Remember?
If I can't sell broadsheets, I'll be...
You hungry, sweet girl?
Let's march!
Mommy.
which begs the question of whether or not she's just an immature hag, and the whole act of saving her was a trick. The way hags work in D&D is that a child will seem mundane until puberty, and then the hag's true genetic nature is revealed. Whether or not the child is traumatized, brain damaged, a secret hag child, or something else is going on is never explored, despite the situation being highly suspicious. Maybe, though, it's just not going by tabletop rules. It's all rather unclear. As I mentioned earlier, the game's subplots often do lack depth, and that also, unfortunately, often applies to how unsatisfying its side quests can end. After all, they're kinda little subplots in their own right. Another quirk is that many items lack purpose. This is sometimes outright nonsense. For example, many pen and paper players of D&D can explain how useful items such as rope can be for an adventuring party to have. In this game, you can find rope and other useful items, but they never have a use. You can do things like carry large crates in your backpack and use them to make a bridge, but you can't ever toss a rope to someone. Stuff like that is weird. Overall, though, I'd say that gameplay's pretty good. As I said earlier, I especially liked that terrain mattered, that there were many spells to play around with, and that smart, alternative solutions often existed to make handling challenges a sensible feat. It was often possible to use stealth or to figure out an optimal approach of attack. Having some strategy be possible made fights more fun, and made avoiding them at points fun as well. Bugs in the new difficulty mode. I need to tack on one more point to the gameplay section, because it's worth noting that the devs have recently released a new mode that's even harder than Tactician mode. That also ties into why I won't want to try this mode due to bugs, so I'm just going to cover both in the same section. The new mode is called Honor Mode. It's not a difficulty which can be switched to during play though. A new game has to be started with that difficulty selected. Honor Mode erases the ability to save often. It only allows for one save file, and the run will end if there's a party wipe. It also removes certain broken things that players can do, and gives some enemies new moves. But while I found Tactician mode to be easy, I doubt that I'll give Honor Mode a go anytime soon. I spent about 200 hours on BG3, and I don't feel like jumping back into it immediately. Also, I think that bugs and other problems would cause Honor Mode to be more frustrating than fun. For example, at one point, my party sided with a group of NPCs against another group of NPCs. A Cloud Kill spell, which is a miasma of deadly poison, had been cast early on by my sorcerer. When allied, the NPCs my side was helping knew how to use the miasma to their tactical benefit. However, after victory, they forgot about it. Since it's a concentration spell, a player has to have the caster manually dismiss it. My sorcerer was locked into a victory cutscene with one of the NPCs that her party had just helped, which meant that she couldn't dispel it. So, while the party was being praised by one NPC, another one trod into the deadly cloud, accused my PC of violence, his group agreed, and then my party had to fight the group of people that they just saved. If that Cloud Kill problem had occurred during Honor Mode, then I either would have needed to reload a potentially old save, or would have been forced to retreat from BS while simultaneously losing reputation points with the NPCs that I just bothered to save. NPCs become angry with you if they think you tried to kill them. There's an attitude system. They can only be bribed into liking you again if you make them mad, and bribery's expensive. So yeah, that's not a mode I recommend, at least not until bugs and other issues such as cutscenes causing fights are fixed. Besides that, it's probably important to note that since Honor Mode is new, adds in new moves, and removes certain options, that it might also have its own new bugs to show off as well. As for other bugs, there are several, but most are simply irritating rather than serious problems. Sometimes companions don't follow you because needing to jump will interfere with their pathfinding, and of course I already mentioned several bugs such as what happened when I tried to eliminate a villain early. If you try to do something clever, you might have it go very well, and you may even discover that there's an option there that was meant to be there. However, you might also just glitch things. Be clever at your own risk. The look and the sound. The graphics are generally very good, but some visual glitches do happen early on, such as when my entire party got transported into lava to have a discussion. I also did experience several visual glitches in Act 3. When it's not glitching, which is the majority of the time, then the game's quite pleasant looking. The amount of detail put into its graphic assets is also impressive. Almost every item type in the game is highly detailed and has a description of its own. Its soundtrack is one of the best that I've heard. When exploring, during combat, and while sorting my inventory, I often enjoyed it. Its sound effects are good and add depth to the game. The voice acting is also amazing. Some voices sound epic, such as Ketherick's.
I'll tell you a story, true soul, about a man who sold himself piece by piece. He had everything.
But even random NPCs sound good. As an example, here's one of my favorite scenes with a random NPC who isn't important to the main story.
honestly. I was doing them a favor offering to buy one of their eggs. And how am I repaid? Attacked and run off like some transient. What? No, of course not. I was merely... well... Look, it's just an egg. The Society of Brilliance asked me to acquire one of their roe so they can incubate it and, once it hatches, raise the spawn in their tradition. The Society believes a Githyanki raised in a peaceful, nurturing environment can overcome its violent nature. Hogwash, of course. A Githyanki can no more rise above its nature than gnomes can fly. I beg your pardon? Look, I just need someone to fetch me a Gith egg. Can you do that?
Many others come to mind too, such as Ethel.
Oh! There isn't a bit of colour in those cheeks, Petal. Are you hurt? Cold? Feverish? Auntie Ethel will sort you out. I've lotions and potions galore. Ah, yes. But will your magic cure your ills or turn you blue? Ha! We're two peas in a pod, sweetie. What's life without a little fun, eh? But your magic, and I say this with love, is falling a little short, right? Something is wrong. Auntie Ethel can always tell.
The narrator's really good too.
An enchanted mirror. Raw magic leashed to a bauble. Almost sad. The magic is old and wavering, but you recognize it. The mirror is a thinking lock, hiding some secret. It seems some vain wizard took living magic and twisted it into a forgotten curio.
Final thoughts. At the time of this review, December 2023, they've still been working on their released game despite it having been out since August. Because of this, I do expect that many of BG3's problems will continue to be repaired and that some story beats may be expounded upon. The devs have already done several such things, such as adding on an epilogue that gives players greater closure. However, obviously, I have to base my review on what I experienced and know. So if some of the bugs that I mentioned are gone by the time you see this, well, it is what it is. The major flaws that I experienced were glitches. And even so, while they made things awkward, they didn't totally derail the story or the characters. The overarching plot stayed intact. I also was able to finish the game. It never hit a roadblock due to a glitch, although it almost did. And while I did experience many flaws, they were usually mild to moderate flaws. So overall, I experienced a rather enjoyable game that was consistent, creative, interesting, and fun. When taking all of that info into consideration, then I'd say it's imperfect in several ways, but hopefully the glitches will be fixed, and either way, it's still a top-tier game. I think it deserves much of the praise that it's gotten, but that it's also important to keep realistic expectations in spite of the wild hype around it. While it allows players to do many creative things, and there are solutions to problems that you might not see on the surface right away, being clever can result in glitches. And while people really love to highlight player choice in this game because there is a lot of it, there will be points where you might want to try something, but it's only going to glitch your game. As I said, be clever at your own risk, but I think it's still fun to try.